Ephesians 6.
So lacking Ben, I will do it.
Thank you.
Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert, and always keep on praying for all the saints.
Thank you. So I wanted to focus today on more of the idea that we're in a war, that we actually are. Do we really believe that? That's really the first question. Do we really believe that we're in a war? Most would say, yeah, we do, except I'm not sure we live our days in a way that would indicate that we think we're at war. Maybe that we're not on the front lines, but do you really believe it? Do we live that way? Do you see it?
I feel that way. I was just talking to David about it. I listened to one of your recordings where you left people with a question, where do you find God has you? You're not comfortable. And I find myself in opposition all the time, and it's tiring. I was speaking to David about it. Yeah, it's definitely a dark world. This is a dark town. You can feel it. So there's evil.
So if we really believe that we're at war, what's it look like?
I experience it a lot in marriage, like the sort of easiness to go to blame or judgments, or it can be like almost like a wind at your back that tempts you to say the thing you shouldn't say or act rashly or whatever.
Okay.
And I feel like that's the battleground for the most of the time for us.
So there's temptation as one aspect of it, right?
Yeah. I guess I'm speaking more about the temptation to act selfishly in the moment in the midst of like a conversation or an argument, or like to do things that are selfish, or to not be thoughtful, to not die to self.
Yeah. So the reason I want to bring this up, and this is key in it, what you just said, the idea is, if Paul's telling us about this armor that we're supposed to put on in order to understand or not to fall for the schemes of the devil, it might do us well to understand what those schemes are, right? If you don't want to fall for it, we could pretend, well, he's got lots of schemes, but if we don't ever know what they are, then we're likely to fall for them, right? So what are these schemes? This temptation towards selfishness, this combative kind of place, time that we live in, where everybody is so geared to do this all day long, doesn't matter, right? What else? What are the ways? I guess what I want to get at is, we have specific pieces of armor that Paul lists. That means there's probably specific temptations or specific weaknesses that we might be prone to with this armor, right?
I just want to point out, or I want to say that temptation is also always tend to falter or default to things that feel natural to us, that feel natural to the flesh. And this is just an example. Before actually, I've been brought up Baptist and stuff, and before I struggled with things like darker things like witchcraft. I actually did that. I practiced that for a little bit, and then I got right with God. But I will say that it feels natural. Like the witchcraft. I know it sounds weird, but it's a fleshy thing. It feels natural to practice that. But when you combat it with the scripture and with God in general, it becomes a physical thing. When I say physical, not only do you have to battle with temptation, you battle with spirits. Does that make sense? And I know that sounds really dramatic, but I want to be honest, and I felt God was wanting me to share that because it's not just the temptation part, it's the physical part. Like things, entities or demons can possess you. I've been semi-possessed before, only for a few seconds, but it wasn't until I cried out to God that I realized what it was and how it just, when I cried out to God mentally, I couldn't speak, I couldn't do anything. It went away, and I've experienced things, like I've seen things, and it's not just in the spiritual, it's the physical. Like it's both things, and I just wanted to. I'm sorry, I don't.
No.
I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's a real struggle dealing with that. Like I try to pray every day, if not multiple times a day, and I try to read my word, read the God's word every day, and I feel like if you don't, like you said, if you don't put on the breastplate and the shoes and everything, then you're more likely to just not just die spiritually, but die physically, because demons tend to bring you down emotionally and mentally, and they drain you. And I just want to say that.
Thanks. Appreciate you sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So what's it look like? It could be physical. There's all of this. I just want to say there's depression. There's anxiety. We live in an age where anxiety, depression, I'll say suicide is up by I don't know the statistics, but I know it's up. All of these are areas of attack, right? So what's
I still do not believe that we think we're in a war. So
Yeah.
for the most people that I'm around, and I'm around some pretty flashy, leader type, wonderful people. And one of the things that I come across the most, and one of the bad recordings that I have, what does the Lord say? Instead of, I've got a migraine, it's because of pollen. I've got my knee hurts because I twisted on the trail. I was sleeping and I got choked. I mean, it's the craziest thing to get someone to stop and not react and see what the Lord might be saying to them in the midst of a battle. If you can calm yourself and stop yourself, then you have actual ability to hear something that could really help you. Whether to take a pill, or to go to the doctor, whether to fast, whether to whatever. It's the craziest thing. Because in a war, we think we have to fight it. Instead of resting, that he's already done it. So I just think everything's so jacked up and out of order. Still.
So tell me how you would put it in order. What would be the order that you're
So when I
of?
walk into something, I'm in an antique store, I'm walking down over here, and all of a sudden I just have this headache, and I don't know what's happening, and it almost makes me sick to where I'm going to throw up. I immediately don't go to fear. I just go, okay, Lord, what's going on here? Then I sit back and I see a KKK flag in Bristol, Tennessee for $1,299 that you can take home and put in your house, and you can be tormented by the demons attached to that. Or you can say, in the name of Jesus, I rebuke that. You have no authority over me right here. I'm just walking through. And in the name of Jesus, you got to go. And it leaves.
So how'd you get there? I mean, you didn't start.
Years
Okay.
of getting beat up. Years of letting witchcraft control me. Years of doing all the stuff. And fighting the devil and cussing at him and doing all this other stuff. Instead of getting my life in order and trusting him and submitting to him.
Okay.
Has helped.
How'd you get there? You started over here
Time
years of getting
with him.
beat up.
Time with him.
Time with
Because
him.
what I would do during my time, I would go, gosh, what happened today? Why wouldn't that wicked spirit come out of that person? And then as he would sit back and bring answers to me and this, that, and the other, he would teach me how to war, because Judges 3 says that he leaves people, he leaves folks to learn how to war and rest and trust and this, that, and the other. But it took years to learn. So, and the other thing too is isolation, temptation, all this other stuff. We get isolated and we think we got to do it. Instead of calling, hey, Ray, I'm really struggling here.
Can I ask?
Or, excuse me? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished. I wanted to ask you something about
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
So how did you know in the antique place just to tell it to go rather than like ask what is that? You know how sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'll call you like, I asked what is this before
Yeah.
So how how did you know whether to just tell it to go rather than say like what's this
Well, because
about?
I'm doing nothing to provoke anybody, throw anything. I'm not having sexual thoughts. I'm not doing anything. I'm just vacationing in Knoxville to get my mind off stuff, to see stuff that's amazing.
Oh, so it came out of nowhere.
Furniture came out of
Oh,
nowhere.
okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I hadn't opened myself up. I hadn't
okay.
done anything. I'm just in a place.
And you just kind of knew.
I wasn't about to throw up. I don't have headaches. Normally it's witchcraft when I have headaches. And I'm just sitting back going, okay, I'm really sick. Judy's looking at stuff. And I'm going, okay, Lord, what in the world's going on right here? And I'm just sitting there and just listening. All of a sudden it's like he takes this and right there and there it is. And it was crazy. I got into proximity of it. So I didn't walk in the store. I mean, it's a 5,000 foot building, and I'm just walking the lines, just looking at stuff. Being careful what I touch, being careful what I bring to our house, all that stuff.
So years of doing the wrong thing.
And I did that great.
Yeah, you're good at that.
Like Kezia, I did it great. I was great at witchcraft. I was great at all kinds of stuff, and having my way.
So I think there's a way to accelerate the learning curve, and it's to have these conversations, to ask the questions you're asking. Like I'm fortunate enough to hang out with David Seaton and Mark, and we talk about these kinds of things. So I don't have to pay the same experience tuition.
We call it dumb tax.
Yeah.
Don't pay the same dumb tax.
So I don't have to pay that same tuition. And one of the discussions we had just a week or two ago with the group was, there's really two questions. What's going on here, Lord? And if we really get excited, we can ask that one.
I know, yeah.
And we forget the second one.
What is it?
What do you want me to do about it?
Okay.
And that second, and it may
Okay.
be, child, rest in me, I got this. Right?
Well,
It
you
may
want me
be,
to know.
oh no, you need to engage. You need to, and I wish I told you I got that clear answer every time. But I'm not even asking the second question every time, right? But that was kind of how the discussion evolved in our group was. So for me, that accelerated my warfare learning curve. And I just think those are that's kind of like the 301 or 401 class we're in.
Yeah, she's a little bit like a professor.
What did you say?
You're a professor in that for me a little bit.
Aww.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be no, yeah. I mean, all of you all, but like I've got her texting all the time. What's this mean? What's that mean?
But
So,
you can text him too, right?
yeah.
And what do you want me to do,
That's
Lord?
good.
Because he gives us authority, right?
Absolutely.
He gives us sound mind. gives us authority. The Holy Spirit dwells in us. Now, and there are times it says you just need to shake the dust off your sandals and walk out, right? But there are times where He may call on you to say, no, you need to, this sign literally or figuratively says, pray for me. Then you need to pray for me.
Right.
So I literally did this today. Right
See
before.
what a fast learner he is?
Yeah. I got 100 on the quiz.
I want to
You
go back
good.
to this dumb
The
tax.
100%.
I don't get that.
I never said anything about dumb tax.
No, I don't mind. Dumb
You wanna
tax.
know what
Yeah,
it
give
means?
it to me.
I used to tell my kids, look, I've done these things.
Oh,
You don't
okay.
need to do them. If you'll listen to me, I've paid your dumb tax. You
That's
don't
beautiful.
have
Thank you.
to.
Yeah. Totally.
That's a dumb tax.
100%.
I've paid your dumb tax. You
Good.
don't have to.
See, that's
But
awesome.
they can always choose to pay it themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they sometimes have, yes.
It's on you now. Exactly.
I offered, I've paid it. Yeah.
It's on bird tax.
Yeah.
It's dumbass tax.
Yeah.
Oh, I got my
So literally, when we got here earlier today, the Walmart greeters was sitting down there, you know.
Yes.
And so I asked these guys, and I said, look, here's something that's been going on. I need feedback on it. And it was this series of 3 physical things that have happened to me in the past little while. But they all 3 had different, I'll say, outcomes. And one, I don't know how much of the story I need to tell, but
Might help.
okay. A couple of months ago, I'm sitting at the house. I'm not doing anything. I got my feet propped up. I'm reading something, book, whatever, and my ankle starts to hurt. I'm like, man, you know, sometimes your joint kind of gets in a weird position. You kind of try and work it out. So I'm doing this, trying to work it out, and it feels like I have just severely sprained my ankle, and I can't hardly walk. I get up, try and walk it off. I can barely walk. I'm like, okay, this is weird. And so I walk for a while. It gets a little better, and so I go about my business. It was in the morning. I went out and did my thing. Came back in the late afternoon, took my shoes off, and my ankle is swollen like crazy. And I've got the typical blood line at the bottom, you know, the blue line where the blood settled from swelling. I didn't do nothing to it. And so I'm like, okay, Lord, what in the world is going on? And the word attack comes to mind. I'm like, that's weird. Okay. So I sit down. I tell David, Mark, Thursday morning, they prayed for me. Go about my business, it heals, everything's fine. Then I'm at a conference this past week at Two Rivers Church. It's called Quiet Waters. And it's not quiet, by the way. It's horribly misnamed. It's very loud music. So I've got tinnitus, so I don't want it to get worse. And I put earplugs in so I can, you know, still hear some. But I take them out, and this ear is completely stopped up. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. All of a sudden, it came out of nowhere. And I'm thinking, allergies are pretty bad, I guess. And so I go about my business. An hour later, I'm in a meeting where we're getting ready to break up into prayer teams, and so it's kind of here's your marching orders kind of deal meeting, and I start getting this weird halo kind of on this side of my eye and around, and I'm thinking, what's going on? This is weird. Never had eye problems before. Suddenly I've got eye problems, and I'm a doctor's kid, so I do have a lot of medical semi-knowledge in my head. But I'm thinking, it's just like, I can't remember what the symptoms of a detached retina are. What's going, you know, I'm thinking all kinds of weird stuff. And it gets worse, and it gets worse, and I'm thinking...
But I got to jump in here because you're missing one of the best parts of this story. I know that you get to it. Sorry. I'll throw myself under the bus. But I'm a doctor's kid. What am I going to run to? What's familiar?
Yeah.
It's a killer way to think. Not always,
No,
but
I'm with you.
you know what I'm saying?
I
So
do.
we've all been trained this or this and the other, or like, I pray for Corinne a lot with the concussion stuff. Well, concussions do this, and this, but is it an attack? So you got to know. So anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
No, you're good.
We are going to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to one of the guys on the team. We get in the room. It's getting pretty bad. It's real blurry, and I can't hardly. It's like this in my eye, and I'm thinking, someone's going to have to drive me to the doctor. I don't know. We sit down. I don't do anything about it yet. The first person comes in that needs to be prayed for, is going to be prayed for, sits down, and I start going through the whole spiel. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You okay with that? As I'm doing that, it goes away. Just gone. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. Weird. I'm hoping it's going to stay away. So we pray for this young woman, and at the end, I get this thought, maybe I ought to ask her. I was like, are you having eye issues? And she goes, yeah, I am. So I'm like, okay, now we're going to pray for you. Now, I say all three of those things because I'm asking the Lord about all of this. And sometimes it's an attack. Sometimes it is just allergies. And sometimes it's Him doing something that's so weird and outside my box that it doesn't even dawn on me in the moment while it's going on at first that could be Him. So, Mark's right. You go to what you know or think you know, and the Lord doesn't necessarily keep you from doing that. He lets you wrestle through it. And so it wasn't until later, it's like, oh, okay. And when I asked him about all that, what I heard was, sometimes it is an attack, sometimes it's allergies, and sometimes I'm trying to show you something. I want you to ask me about it every time. I want you to ask me every time. And it's the reason that He wants me to ask Him every time is because He wants the relationship. It's not about necessarily a word of knowledge. Those are cool. Okay, that's great. I prefer a different way to do it instead of going half blind all of a sudden. That's a little concerning. But I don't get a choice in how He decides to do things. I remember a story about a guy who was explaining how he heard from God, and it was these vague, really subtle cues, and he was really going out on a limb. And the guy said, "You mean you said all of that based on these flimsy little bits of thoughts?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've discovered that it's probably going to work better if I adjust to the way He speaks rather than demanding He speaks the way I want." So there's this process of discovery that He's okay with, and it applies to these attacks as well. What we don't necessarily understand as an attack. My shoulder's hurting. I don't understand. Maybe I ought to take some Motrin or whatever. But I think He wants us to learn how to really pay attention. I'm convinced that learning how to really pay attention is. I'll only speak for me. I was in a meeting one time with some really bright people, and one of the questions, what do you think your spiritual job is? That was the question to the group from the leader. And my answer was, I think my spiritual job is to learn how to pay attention. And I think the more we actually learn how to pay attention, the better off we're going to be. And there's a process, and I don't know, I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying to process this out loud a little bit because I really wasn't planning on telling that part of it.
I'm glad you did. Because I want to jump in on your process here.
Go for it.
My favorite piece of poetry in the entire world, I've read it multiple times here, but it's Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and I keep it in my Bible near my mission. Earth's crammed with heaven, every common bush afire with God, but only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit around and pluck blackberries. And I just love that because the idea of paying attention, I think that's where you get awe. I mean, I quoted you on process of discovery. I think that leads to awe.
Yeah.
And relationship.
Can.
Yeah. I think it does if you'll just keep processing with them and talking to them and stuff. Because when he tells you something that you don't know, it's like, he's so addicting.
But the poem, the reason I said it can, the poem says, well, the rest can sit around and pluck blackberries.
Your choice.
Yeah. It can lead to real, it can lead to real discovery of glory, of who he is, what he's actually saying, because I'm convinced that the still small voice is really the way he most often speaks.
It's his kindness to us in our own, leaving room for our own agency.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we couldn't handle a loud voice. I think actually when Jesus spoke to a group of men in the Garden of Gethsemane in a normal voice, they all fell down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think if God spoke to us in a loud voice, we would be crushed.
Mm-hmm.
Like we actually would be crushed. So it is only in a quiet voice that we can actually take in because of the power of God and the Word created.
Yeah.
So when the Word is spoken, what it does, Lazarus, come forth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We,
Yeah. You go.
I was just gonna say, we tend to be really binary, right? We're a light switch. There is no spiritual warfare. Everything that happens is spiritual warfare. And that's the easy thing to run to in this discussion. But that's why I think Seaton's story is so powerful. Some of it was spiritual warfare. Some of it was an allergy. And some of it was saying, he sees. God saying he sees, right? And so if you just, when you're buying a white car, every car you see is a white car. When you're talking about spiritual warfare, everything that happens is spiritual warfare. It's not. And that's where the follow-up question is. Well, is what is it, Lord, and what do you want
me to know about this? What do you want me to do?
Right. So as we shift to be warriors or to reclaim our spiritual warrior in us that God has given us, we wear the armor all the time. We don't wield the sword all the time. Yeah. Right? There are some times where we just listen and say, yes, Lord. So there's that discernment element that has to come into play. And that's why I think the beauty of Seaton's story is 3 occurrences, 3 different sources.
Yeah.
Sorry, were you about to?
No, go ahead.
There's a guy I work with, and ever since like a certain point, maybe a year ago, there's something about him to me that just glows, and it's like a soft glow, and the more I learn about him, and the more I just watch humanity, I feel like there's something so beautiful about a soft glow, because it reminds me so much of God's heart, where it's just how affronting is it when you wake up in the morning and someone flips on the light that comes on overhead and you're like, oh, but it's I feel like there are people who when they've been through things, it's they can come to other people with this soft glow, and it's so attractive because it's beautiful and it's not affronting and it's drawing and it makes you curious as to why it's there. And I don't know, it reminds me so much of God's heart and why he's so attractive, and it can get brighter if you get closer, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or if layers are taken off, but it's just so, I don't know.
So the trendy term for that right now is a non-anxious presence.
That's a trendy term.
But it's a good phrase. It's to be someone who's a non-anxious presence. It's a really restful thing for most people.
Yeah.
And it's that drawing in. And here's the loud voice is one thing, but what happens when you go, oh, hey, come here. You whisper and people lean in, and I think when God does that, he's drawing you closer. He's drawing you in. I thought for a long time that Christianity could kind of be boiled down to this: my dad is great, and I'm going to be just like him, and I'm going to be so close that I can hear every whisper, every little thing that I'm going to be that close so I can really see what he's like, and so I can hear everything he says, even if he's just the softest little whisper. That right there is, it's a beautiful thing, I think.
Something you just said makes me think about when I was coaching full time. You don't yell to get people's attention. I would lower my voice I would get down on my kids' levels, and I would bring my voice really low, and they would all come towards me.
That's it.
And that's what God does with us. The easiest way to get our attention, or not the easiest way maybe, but the best way to get our attention is for Him to have a still small voice.
Yeah. It's Dallas Willard says this way: when you're first a Christian, you might expect, when you first become a Christian, you might expect that the Lord His voice would be very loud and very specific and very direct and very, very different than yours. Mm-hmm. Just so you know it's Him. But as you become more and more like Him, you ought to expect the voice to sound more and more like yours, because your mind and His mind are becoming closer and closer. You're thinking more like Him all the time. Mm-hmm. And so it's not going to be, you kind of expect maybe that after years of hearing His voice, it'd be very distinct and I'd recognize it immediately and I'd be able to. But he says it's kind of the opposite. The more mature you get, the more it's going to sound that your mind and His mind are most alike. And so you're not going to be able to necessarily recognize the huge difference between you, because the difference is getting smaller. And that's one thing I wanted to say about this armor. It's God's armor, right? That's what it said. You put on God's armor. It's not your armor. It's God's armor. And this sounds like a shift, but it's not. Has anybody ever seen the Japanese? They grow square watermelons, cubed watermelons. Do you know how they do that?
Did you say this is not a shift?
It's not.
Okay, good.
Just hang in there. It's coming around. It's coming around.
Okay. Do they grow it in a mold or something?
Exactly.
Because they stack better.
They stack better, but they're more ornamental than anything else. But here's the deal: they put them in a box, and it grows into this shape of the cube, right? That's the way it works. Now, when we put on God's armor and we grow into that armor, who do we begin to look like? What shape do we grow into? It's this constant wearing of God's armor that causes us to grow into that shape. Romans 5, I believe, says you've been predestined to be conformed to the image of Christ. And that's what this looks like. We're putting on Christ. That's what Paul over and over says. Put on Christ. Take the old man off, put the new man on. But the new man, the new Adam, which what new man, Adam actually means man. You put on the new man. You put on Christ. And you're conformed to His image the more that you put Him on. It's His righteousness that we put on. It's not our own. It's His salvation. It's His peace. He's the Prince of Peace. It's His faith. It's a gift. He's the author and finisher of our faith, right? So we're putting on His stuff. And unlike David, who suddenly put on Saul's armor and it didn't fit and he wasn't used to it, and what he says, I haven't tested it, I think is one of the ways it's put on, but the idea is that I haven't used this very much. I haven't used this to get used to it. I don't know how to use this stuff. The more we put on His righteousness, His faith, His truth, His salvation, His peace, His word, all of these things, the more we're used to using these things, we become like David with a shepherd's staff and a sling. We know these things. And so we're able to use this armor because now it fits us. Now we know how to use it. Now it's what we look like. And when we step onto the battlefield, which actually doesn't look like a battlefield, by the way, it looks like rest. It looks like being still and quiet. Yeah. We're not supposed to go out fighting a bunch of stuff. I mean, the weapons of our warfare, they're designed to take down strongholds. They're not like the weapons we use. We don't have to go out and fight. We can fight in prayer, which is the last part of this section that talks about is pray. Our prayer is about being connected with Him, and this idea of I've got to go fight all the demons. I'm going to talk to the demons, and if that's all your warfare is, then you're going to be hurt, because the Lord's already won the battle. All we're doing is sitting with Him and doing what He. Okay, Lord, what do I need to know about this KKK flag? Okay, there it is. I need to know. What do you want me to do? Well, I renounce it and I walk on. Everything goes good. I'm just going to do what He tells me to do, not what I think I need to do for the battle. Because the other part of this that's really important, and I've said it before, but it bears saying again, when Joshua sees the commander of the Lord's army, right before they go to Jericho, right? He sees the commander of the Lord's army and he says, well, are you for us or against us? He said, no, neither one. And then he says, take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. Right? Moses gets the same instruction at the burning bush. Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. Well, if you remember what taking off the shoes means in that culture is that you're giving up your rights. Because if you go to Ruth and Boaz, Boaz is going to redeem Ruth, but there's a nearer kinsman who has this right before him. And he takes him to the gate, the city gates. And he says, okay, here's the deal. You've got some land or something. I can't remember the specifics, but here you can redeem this from your nearer kinsman here. But there's a wife involved and you have to take her on, and she's a Moabite. And he goes, no, I'm out. And the way he shows that is he takes off his shoe and he holds it up. And Boaz says, okay, elders around the gate, I want you to watch, see what he's doing. He's relinquishing his right for the redemption of this nearer king, Naomi, Ruth. And so this taking off of the shoe is a relinquishing of the right. So when Moses hears that at the burning bush, God's saying, we're about to meet, but it's on my terms, not yours. When Joshua meets the commander of the Lord's army, he takes off his shoes, and that means that God's in charge of what this looks like. Okay? And He's going to be the one to tell him what to do. He's going to give the orders, and Joshua submits to that. So,
well, as you know, a number of us are in Revelation and BSF. But on the very last day, right, the dragon, Satan, has gathered all the generals and all the armies. And there's Jesus with all the saints. You know how much use that armor was? No, because in a blink, it was over. So that's our God. It's not like we're practicing for Armageddon. We're practicing obedience to Him and putting on the armor. His armor is part of that. So that's who we're serving. The one who ends it in the nail site.
I think about that a lot whenever I do feel something off, like what Mark was talking about with like a flag or whatever. Often for me, it's like deep conversations with New Age friends that are kind of still deep in that world, and I'll start to get all sorts of weird physical sensations. It's easy for me to go into works and feel like, I gotta work myself back onto the armor. And the thing that helps the most with that is the passage about my life is hidden with Christ in God. And it's just recognizing that I'm in Christ. Like it's not a work for me to do this. It's more of a rest. It's resting into the truth of that. And then the Lord sorts out the ordering of it all.
Yeah.
And
that's beautiful.
That's so freeing.
I think it's interesting that it says 3 different times to stand.
Yeah.
And when we think about David putting on Saul's armor, he couldn't hardly stand up and walk around in it. And so it takes us back to that passage of like God's armor is light, right? It's my yoke is easy and my burden is light, because we're not the ones that are,
not our armor. But our part is that we have to stand. And I think when you talk about not recognizing what's going on or not understanding that we're in a battle, I think part of that is just because we live in a weary world. And we're weary people.
Yeah.
And it keeps us from having, one of the things that I've really been asking the Lord to do is give me more curiosity. Because in our world, it's so easy to think we have all the answers at our fingertips, right? Yeah. Literally, we can look at anything we want to. They just looked up the picture of the square watermelon and showed it to me, right? Yeah. So, in that kind of a world, we lose our sense of curiosity. And so when something happens, we just think we know, oh, well, my shoulder's hurting because I slept weird or whatever, you know. So we think we already know all those answers, and we lose all our curiosity about what God is doing around us in the world. And then when we don't, when we can't see that He is active, that's what makes us weary. Because everything that's going on is so dark. And if we don't have anything in our minds, we don't have that element, right, that is the filter for what's going on in our world, then we don't have the ability to see that He is active. And then that's what makes us not be able to stand.
Yeah.
Right? We have to, in order to be able to stand, we have to actively be paying attention to what God is doing. That's what allows us to press on.
Yeah.
You know, so.
That feels a lot like awe as well. Like what Mark was talking about, like when you're able to be in that spot of like needing to be encouraged by noticing what He's doing kind of thing, and not being just like the awe part of like encouragements along the way. Like, He's got this, like look how pretty that sunset is.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could say one thing, I feel like when you're talking about Google, the one thing you can't Google is what Christ's will is. You have to ask Him specifically. That's the one thing you can't find on the internet is what God wants you to do about a certain situation and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes me weary is like I'm curious and I'm asking, and I want to be obedient, but there's like pictures or like things that I don't know what it means. Well, what does that mean, God? That is like getting to a point where it's like a source of doubt now. And then I read this, and that's like I need more faith. Like that's like basically an attack. That's like I don't know, but I just need to hear. But when you guys talk about the process of discovery, can somebody tell me what that looked like for them? Because I think I'm just kind of in a frustrating stage.
It looks a lot like frustrating stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go through that?
Oh, I still go through it all the time.
What did you say, Susan?
It looks like a frustrating stage to me too. I'm frustrated. I literally spent 2 weeks ago. I spent a couple of days in a pity party because I was super frustrated. With, yeah. And
okay, I'm having pity parties too.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say,
that is so comforting to know I'm not alone.
You are not alone.
You're not.
You're not alone.
One of the things that you get to do is like in groups like this, you kind of get to practice. So like when we have our prayer time and you're listening and you kind of hear something that you're not sure, you want to say it because you're not really sure. And then someone says something or they give a same verse and it's what you were thinking, right? Then that's like the perfect place where God goes, that's how I talk to you. You know, that's how I talk to you. So one of the ways when I first started praying for people is that God would show me like pictures of something. So I might be praying for Seaton, and I would see spiders on Seaton. And then before I knew it, someone's like praying for Seaton, and they're like, something about fear, and so Seaton's like, hey, I've been in fear or whatever. And all of a sudden, spiders that I saw became fear. Well, that was an easy way for God to teach me about what that was. I have another friend, and it was colors. They would see certain colors, and they would just listen to what everyone else was praying, and pretty soon God would help them understand that color was his way of telling them kind of what was going on in prayer. So part of it was being in a group of people that you trust and kind of testing what you're hearing based on what you hear other people saying, and go, okay, that's orange means this, or this, I mean, just for an example, or whatever it is. Maybe it's a certain smell or something like that. But in groups like this where you have people who are praying is a perfect place for you to start off, like just kind of listening and testing that. And it's like, it can be really frustrating, and then right about the time that you get it, God changes and says, now we're going to talk this way. And you're like, oh, great. But, but that's just a practical way of what that looks like.
And everything's different. Every person is different, but there'll be something about each person that you'll be able to latch on to.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, I realized that I had no way to make decisions with a godly worldview. And so I asked a bunch of godly friends, how do you make decisions? And they all gave me a point of view, and they had Bible verses. And I ended up in a place I call righteous common sense. And it goes like this. I ask God. And I wait on God, and I ask God, and I don't hear what he has to say if he's speaking to me a lot of times. So then I say, okay, what course of action is consistent with the call that he's put on my life? And if I go ahead and did that action, and he was sitting next to me, and he is here, could I explain to him that choice based on what I understand that he wants to do with the life he gave me? And if I can do that, I go and say, and Lord, if I've got it wrong, yank me out of there. And I go. And because, I've had some people say, well, I don't move until I hear the Lord. Well, I'd never get out of this chair. So it's like, I ask, is it consistent with what I believe he wants me to do with my life? Is it honoring to him, and could I make a case? If he said, he said to Job, make your case, right? Okay, if he said, Ray, make your case. Well, Lord, I think you told me this, and I thought by doing this it was consistent, so I went. But I said, yank me out of there. And there are times you yank you out of there. I'm not saying that works for everybody, but I'm saying I woke up one day and said, I don't know how to make decisions.
I think sometimes you need to use your frustration too. I see that. Like my frustration is built on something that's a faulty foundation that he's trying to move me off of that foundation, and that I'm not going to see it until I see that frustration pretty clearly.
I feel like frustrations are the way for us to be refined in God. God wants us to be pure like him. He wants us to love each other unconditionally. And the frustrations and the sorrow and the pain is just to show us how much this is not our permanent home, that being with him is our eternal permanent home once we pass. But I feel like, I believe that God is refining us every single day, and the frustrations is just to help you learn to lean into him, to have faith in him, to pray on it, and not just expect immediate, immediate response or immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Because God works in his own time. And for me, faith it's really hard to have faith when you don't see it, when you don't feel it, when you don't acknowledge it. Like, you really have to acknowledge, like, he is the creator, the Lord. He is our God, and he, in his due time, he will show us what he wants us to do. I'm not really sure what his name is, but agree with him.
Right.
Right, okay, sorry, Ray.
No worries, Ken.
But I agree with Ray. You have to be proactive. You have to pray about it. You have to move. Because God always wants us to be proactive. He wants us to show it, not just, like, He doesn't just want to show us, He wants to show the world how much He loves us. And being proactive is what He wants us to do. He wants us to show it to each other and to have faith in Him. If that makes sense.
I think the thing that's helped me as much in my life as anything is that I have to go back and remember the places where the Lord has spoken to me pretty clearly, and I have to have a practice of remembering, because we have spiritual amnesia and we forget that the Lord has spoken to us or that He's acted on our part, and so I think it's really important to write those things down and be able to revisit those things when we're in that season of doubt. Have those Ebenezers. It has been for me.
I'll say this also, that sometimes it's not time for the answer. And we've said that in several different ways, but I've got a friend we talked, and probably 8 years ago, he had a dream. We had no clue. We asked, we prayed, we did all that. It got nothing. But it just kind of hung out there. And about 2 weeks ago, finally got the answer. Oh, that's what this is about. Okay. So, yeah, there you go. Sometimes it just takes a while. And I don't know why he would give a dream and then 8 years later give the explanation for it, except that we wrestled with it and wrestled with him, and it was this back and forth, and I think he enjoyed the back and forth about it. And I think part of that was just getting to know him better. It was the time with him.
Like Concha said, the timing.
Yeah, it is.
Makes me think of the image of like a tree rooted by by a running river or whatever that verse is.
Yeah.
That like as roots grow deeper, like they're sort of striving towards the resource, but it's the lack of the resource that causes them to strive, and because they expand and grow out, they create a stable base for that.
There's no water in the first 3 inches. You got to go down.
Yeah.
That's good. Any other thoughts?
I have a question.
Okay.
What was the metaphor for the blackberries? If you're picking, so you're looking at the flower in the poem. Most people just pick.
What was the
blackberries.
metaphor for the
Yeah,
blackberries?
yeah.
Well, I think for me, it speaks to time with Him. Because I think if you don't spend time in the Word with Him, hanging out with people that He puts around you, I think that you're just going to see what is to the physical eyes you see, instead of what the Spirit is saying. So I think that the devil tells you that if you spend time with the Lord, it's a waste. It's not efficient. It's not, you're not leading people to Christ, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, all this other stuff, but you're choosing Him. And I think to be able to differentiate, to go back to the point, Psalm 19 says that the whole, everything, heavens and earth declare the glory of the Lord. But earth's crammed with heaven, earth's crammed with heaven. And every common bush of fire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. And I think the idea of taking off his shoes, I love that because I wrote that down in my notes, is surrender. Surrendering who you are and your time, because that becomes the altar of sacrifice. And I think everybody starts out with Saul's armor. Everybody starts out in frustration. But Jesus says only those endure. And that word Melanie talked about in the Greek, stand, means to endure over periods of time. So, and I think the other thing too is one of the things I think that we've not done well in this class, and I think I've probably done it more. I think I've caused us to look for more signs and wonders than him. And I think that we need to look to him and his word and endure and stand. Not saying that signs are not wrong, but every time Jesus heals somebody, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. Because he had to get out of the cities, he had to go to the country. And I think you read the book of Mark, I didn't come for signs. I came to give my Father's word. And he is the word. And so I'm not saying that we don't look for that and we don't pray for healings or any of that stuff, but I think our focus can be those things and not only those who take off their shoes. The rest sit around and just take what's given. And they see God as Santa Claus, or they see God as this or that, or fix my problems, or this distorted, weird-ass gospel that we all, I think, itching ears want to hear that. That God will fix all your problems. No, he won't. The struggle is part of the walk. It's the Via Dolorosa. You look at Christ's life in the 3 years that he was poor. He slept in caves. He slept on rocks. He's the God of all gods, and he humbled himself to be one of us. What would he expect from us? To humble ourselves and take off our shoes, which means my shoes are yours. That's what that says to me.
Thank you.
So everything's a process, sure.
Sounds like storing up your treasures in heaven also.
I'm sorry, can't hear you.
It sounds like storing up your treasures in heaven also.
Totally. Just attention.
To look to where the most imminent, highest value thing is in every moment, which is God. And there's treasure in every moment if you can be present to his presence.
Yeah.
So that's what has kept ringing in my head really this whole conversation, in the midst of like every moment being an opportunity from God, like and just like the idea of him as a father wanting us to engage with him and ask him questions about everything, and orienting us and teaching us how his world works, and how even just the ankle hurting and the headaches and whatever, and for me, like how a baby gets born and all of those kind of things of like what I get to ask as many times as I remember, as many times, because every time he offers, every single second of what are you seeing with this? What's your perspective? What would you have me do? What are you saying about this? And that feels so loving of God to be like, hey, you're living in a world that's a both and, of a spiritual and a physical world, and I'm going to teach you how to do that, how to have both of those in tension.
Yeah.
One of you said this, so I'm just going to read it real quick, because I write down things that you all say. It relates to what you just said. Signs and wonders cement faith, but the miraculous does not sustain you. Time with him will.
Yeah.
Continue to lean in.
Yeah.
So one of y'all said that.
It's a good word for us all.
I feel the group shifts that way.
Right. And I don't want to make signs of wonder or something dirty or we don't look for.
Yeah.
But it's not the heart.
Yeah.
The heart is obedience to his word.
So C.S. Lewis puts it this way. He says, if you put secondary things first, you don't get primary or secondary things. They get both taken away. If you put primary things first, you get secondary things thrown in. So the order has to be right. You've got to put primary things first.
Like seek first the kingdom first, right?
Bingo. That's it. So I want to kind of wrap up this idea of the armor and what it looks like to put it on by looking at the, just real quick, looking at the return of the prodigal. Because the prodigal has been out and he's been just beat to pieces. He's starved. He's in awful shape. But he comes back, but the father runs to him. And he says, bring me the robe and put it on him. This breastplate and these things. He says, and bring the ring and put it on, and bring the shoes. Put the shoes back on him. The rights of a son, the authority of a son, the favor of the father in the robe. So this armor that we talk about and the warfare that we look, it looks like coming back ragged and worn out, and the Father comes to us and he puts it on us and he takes us inside. And the way we do warfare is we come back to the Father and he takes us inside the inner court. And it's a beautiful picture. It's the loving part that's so amazing. It's stunning. So, and we're going to end next week with that last little bit in which just think about this and think back through Ephesians, because in like the last verse or 2 verses, Paul mentions love 3 times. 3 times, and that's just that last little bit. And the last mention, well, we'll get to it next week, but
don't get
sorry.
ahead of yourself.
Sorry.
Thanks for doing it like you do it.
Absolutely. All right. I know that we're going. Thank you. Appreciate it. Lord, thank you. We just ask that this word would settle into our hearts. Guide us, lead us. Help us to take our shoes off. In Jesus' name. All right, now.